The hour of 6:30 having arrived and some chaos having ensued, I will call to order the Common Council meeting of Tuesday, March 10th, 2026, and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa Cole. Let me see if Alder Figueroa Cole is here. Alder Glenn.
Here.
Alder Glenn is present. Alder Govindarajan.
Here.
Govindarajan is present. Alder Uguer. Present. Alder Uguer is present. Alder Harrington McKenney. Present. Alder Harrington McKenney is present. Alder Lankella.
Here.
Alder Lankella is present. Alder Knox. Here. Alder Knox is present. Alder Madison. Here. Alder Madison is present. Alder Martinez-Rutherford. Present. Alder Martinez-Rutherford is present. Alder Matthews. Here. Alder Matthews is present. Alder Mayor.
Here.
Mayor is present. Alder O'Brien. Here. Alder O'Brien is present. Alder Ochovich. Alder Ochovich is present. Alder Pritchett. Here. Alder Pritchett is present. Alder Tischler. Alder Tischler is present. Alder Verveer. Here. Alder Verveer is present. Alder Viver. Here. Alder Viver is present. Alder Duncan.
Here.
Alder Duncan is present. Alder Evers.
Here.
Alder Evers is present. Alder Field.
Here.
Alder Field is present. And Alder Figueroa Cole.
Here.
Figueroa Cole is present. Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. In addition to my normal request that we remember that we're here to do the business of the people of Madison and to do so with grace and kindness, I want to thank you all for your flexibility and ask for your patience, because although you all have your name tags, and of course I know your faces, none of you have the right names in the system because of where you're sitting. Well, that's not true. Some of you do. So just give me a moment to figure out who you are when you ring in, and we will muddle through the technological issues. For those of you who are not in the room, approximately half of the mics in the chamber, maybe a third of the mics in the chamber are not working. So we've had to rearrange where everyone is sitting tonight. But we are flexible and adaptive. So our first item tonight is a presentation. It's Legistar 92161, a presentation of poetry. You all recall we do this on a regular basis. And tonight, our poet laureate, Stephen Espada Dawson, is not able to join us, although they usually introduce the readings. I've been asked to introduce this reading. I just want to start by saying I think this is such a lovely tradition that we bring art into this space, and it gives me certainly a moment. I hope it gives the rest of you a moment to breathe and pause and think about the bigger picture. So I believe we have our poet online with us, and QQ, I'm going to try and promote you to panelist. If you would accept that invite, we could actually see and hear you. And while we're waiting for that, our poet tonight is QQ Yang, who will read Lucille Clifton's Blessing the Boats. And QQ is a writer based in Madison by way of Guangzhou, Texas, and New York City, and her poems are published or forthcoming from Black Warrior Review, Mississippi Review, Up the Staircase Quarterly, and elsewhere. And her nonfiction has been recognized by the New York Times. She holds a BA in History of Art and Architecture from Harvard and is currently an MFA candidate at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I will turn it over to you, QQ.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for having me. I'm happy to be here with you all. I was shocked by how long the Zoom invite was, so I figured I'd pick a brief poem to usher you in. Okay, this is Blessing the Boats by Lucille Clifton. May the tide that is entering even now the lip of our understanding carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind, then turn from it, certain that it will love you back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever. And may you, in your innocence, sail through this to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're getting a round of applause in the room. Very much appreciate you joining us tonight to share that poem. All right. Our next item is honoring resolutions. Item 2 is Register 92144, proclaiming April 26, 2026 as World Migratory Bird Day 2026 in the city of Madison. We don't have anyone to receive this, so we will dispense with reading. But President Vitiver, a motion, please. Is that you? Wow.
Yes, move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of item 2? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. That brings us to disclosures and recusals. Are there any disclosures or recusals by members of the body on items on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, that will take us to the consent agenda. President Vitiver.
Consent agenda is moved with the recommended action listed for each item on the agenda, except items that have registrants wishing to speak and items that alders have separated out for discussion or debate purposes. This document lists supermajority items, agenda items with recommendations different from the agenda, items for exclusion, items introduced from the floor, and agenda items with corrections. The following items are supermajority. Item 12, Legislative File 92219, report of the mayor submitting resident committee appointments to the Madison Food Policy Council, 14 votes required. Item 76, Legislative File 92210, indicating a willingness for the city of Madison to annex the April Hills neighborhood from the town of Blooming Grove upon receipt of an otherwise valid petition for the annexation of the territory, 14 votes required. Item 83, Legislative File 92015, amending, that one is going to be, it is supermajority, but that is also going to be excluded. So I'm going to hold off and read it when we get to the excluded items. Item 85, Legislative File 92031, authorizing the City of Madison Community Development Division to accept a proposed grant of up to $750,000 from the Oscar Rennebohm Foundation to help fund a 4-year neighborhood-based older adult pilot program, amending CDD's 2026 adopted operating budget to recognize receipt of the first year's installment of that grant of $328,920 and authorizing its expenditure, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a grant agreement with the foundation to accept the grant. 15 votes required. Item 86, Legislative File 92053, amending the city's 2026 adopted budget to appropriate $70,000 from the general fund contingent reserve to fund the water utility, stormwater utility, and sewer utility portions of MadCap for the remainder of 2026. 15 votes required. Agenda items with recommendations different from the agenda. Item 14, Legislative File 92137, calling for a public health comprehensive needs assessment for use of opioid settlement funds. That item has been withdrawn. Item 75, Legislative File 91848, substitute, amending various sections of the Madison General Ordinances to correct inconsistencies and improper references in the Madison General Ordinances, constituting a 2025 City Attorney's Revisers Ordinance. And there was actually a minor amendment to that at CCEC, very minor wording, and that was recommended for adoption. Item 97, Legislative File 92032, amending various subsections of Section 33.56 of the Madison General Ordinances related to Transportation Commission to update composition, duties, and procedures. Common Council Executive Committee recommends adoption. Following items are excluded. Item 5, Legislative File 91958, appeal of Madison Landmarks Commission denying a certificate of appropriateness for 1123 Jennifer Street, exterior alteration in the Third Lake Ridge Historic District, roof replacement. This is in District 6. Item 83, Legislative File 92015, amending the 2026 EDD Land Banking Program to add $4 million of GO borrowing supported by TID 44 and authorizing the execution of a purchase and sale agreement with RDC Development LLC or their successors and assigns for the purchase of 17 properties addressed as 404 Cottage Grove Road, 514, 526, 533, and 551 Penny Street, 3752 Sargent Street, 3708 Old Brook Ave, 702, 804, 808, 812, 816, 820, 824, 828, and 832 Royster Ave, and 501 Grand Oak Trail, Madison, for land banking purposes and authorizing the expenditure of funds for environmental assessment, title work, closing costs, holding costs, any necessary demolition work, and pre-development costs for the same property, all totaling $6.2 million. Item 88 was originally had someone registered, and that person is no longer wishing to speak, and so that item will not be excluded. I have one item to introduce from the floor. Legistar File 92294, by title only, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Baker's Place LLC for 20 to 50 parking permits at the South Livingston Street Garage. This will be referred to the Transportation Commission on 3/18, Finance Committee on 3/16, and Common Council on 3/24.
Thank you, President Vitiver. Are there any other items that members of the body would like to have excluded from the consent agenda at this time? Alder Evers?
Thank you, Mayor. If we could pull item 83.
Item 83 is already excluded, Alder.
Got it. Thank you.
Are there any other items that alders would like to have excluded from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, let's just make sure we don't have any confusion. Items 12 and 76 are 14-vote items. Items 85 and 86 are 15-vote items. The recommendation on item 14 is to withdraw. On item 75, to adopt as amended by CCEC. And on item 97, to adopt. We will exclude items 5 and 83. And there's one introduction from the floor, Legistar 92294, which will go to Finance Committee on the 16th, Transportation on the 18th, and back to Council on the 24th. All right, seeing no additional items, President Vitiver, a motion on the consent agenda.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. And that will take us to public comment. Our first item with speakers wishing to comment is item 5, which is an appeal of the Madison Landmarks Commission denying a certificate of appropriateness for 1123 Jennifer Street, exterior alteration in the 3rd Lake Ridge Historic District, a roof replacement in District 6. We have 2 registrants wishing to speak. The first is Michelle Ruggier of District 6, to be followed by Catherine Kolpin Gustafson. Do we have Michelle?
Yes, I'm virtual.
Yep, go ahead.
Is it 1 to 2 minutes? Is that okay?
3 minutes.
Okay, great. My name is Michelle Regier. As you can see on the screen, Michi is my friends and family name, so you're all friends and family now. I own and live at 1211 Spate Street in the 3rd Lake Ridge Historic District. Thank you for hearing my comments. I would like to bring to the attention of the council the burden that they are placing on homeowners in this neighborhood with practices that are not transparent or inclusive, that have costly delays and requirements and inconsistent decision-making. Determinations to make necessary repairs on our homes are made on a case-by-case basis and not in accordance with transparent rules. The homeowner at Jennifer Street is trying to responsibly maintain a roof, a fundamental structural component, according to the rules we have been given and according to the recommendations by licensed contractors. The Landmark Commission's denial does not reflect the lived reality of those of us who bear the cost of these decisions. The combination of high mandatory material costs, inconsistency between desk determinations and input from experts, and massive delays is creating a neighborhood where homes go without repair And these issues are now impacting our health, safety, and equity, values that I know the city shares. When a handful of us met with our alderperson recently, we shared our stories with each other, and we learned that multiple families on our block have rat and mouse infestations due to the inability to make repairs such as fixing windows or doors. This is not due to a lack of willingness or the basic ability to keep our houses in good repair. It is because we cannot get permits or certificates of appropriateness to do the necessary work because they've been stopped by the Landmark Commission. I love my house and my neighborhood. I'm excited to be part of the city of Madison. When we first bought the house, we met retired teachers and other blue-collar workers who assured us that although these houses need a lot of work, it's doable for a middle-class family to maintain a beautiful house by keeping at it over the long term. I fear that due to the current practices of the Landmark Commission, we are driving out the middle class and building a neighborhood where only the extremely wealthy can afford to live. Our own home's repairs cost double what was initially estimated due to these delays and requirements. In supporting this appeal, I'm also registering my dissent with the current process and hoping we can collectively find a better way. Thank you.
Thank you. The next registrant is Catherine Colpin Gustafson and/or William Gustafson of District 6. Come right up here, maybe, but give me a minute because we are having issues with the mics still.
Okay, I understand. We've got a red light. Is
Yeah,
that good? Can
you should
hear
be
me?
good. Yeah.
Beautiful. And can you hear me if I stand up straight? Okay, thank you. Good evening, members of the council, and thank you for your time tonight. My name is Catherine Colpin Gustafson, and my spouse William and I own the house at 1123 Jennifer Street. We're here because the Landmarks Commission denied our certificate of appropriateness for a standing seam metal roof. The issue is not that the ordinance prohibits this material, rather the denial relied on criteria that do not appear in Madison General Ordinance, Chapter 41. The illustrated design guidelines provide helpful recommendations, but they do not override the requirements set forth in Chapter 41, which governs this appeal. So the appeal comes down to one simple question. Was the ordinance applied as written? The record suggests it was not. Section 4125 4B2 provides two independent paths for roof replacement materials. A project may either replicate the appearance of historic roofing on the structure or use materials compatible with roofing found on historic resources within the district. Our proposal satisfies the second path, the compatibility standard. Standing seam metal roofing exists already on historic resources in the 3rd Lake Ridge District. The commission declined to treat 517 South Baldwin as a comparable example. However, we have also identified 943 Williamson Street as a documented example that clearly meets the ordinance's criteria. Together, these demonstrate that compatible standing seam metal roofs exist in the district. Regarding 517 Baldwin, the commission noted that the property had been altered and therefore was not considered a historic resource. However, the ordinance itself does not contain language explicitly language disqualifying historic resources on the basis of alterations. As a result, the standard was applied narrower than what the code actually states. The commission also relied on conjecture that our house likely had asphalt shingles in 1910, but there's no documentation supporting that conclusion. Importantly, our proposal preserves the roof's form,
You have about a minute.
style, and historic features exactly as required by Section 4125 4A. The only change is the surfacing material, one that the ordinance allows when it is compatible with roofing found on historic resources in the district. The compatibility path exists for situations like this where the original material is uncertain. It is intended to provide predictable, text-based decision-making for homeowners. When homeowners follow the code as written, they should be able to rely on receiving the certificate of appropriateness that the ordinance provides. For that reason, we respectfully ask the council to reverse the Landmark Commission's decision and approve a certificate of appropriateness for 1123 Jennifer Street. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Those are the registrants wishing to speak on this item. Are there questions for any of the registrants? President Bitover?
For the first registrant?
Okay. Do we have Michelle?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, my question is whether you have attempted to do any updates to your properties since we completely revised the landmarks ordinances in 2022?
Our siding, which was the one that doubled in cost by 20,000 due to having to use hardy board, that would have been installed in 2023, I believe. It's been 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Uguer?
Yes, a question for the second registrant, please. Looking through the materials, do I understand that a primary motivation for the standing seam roof is its longevity and the fact that I think you are installing a solar array? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Alder. Our intention and our wish is to install a solar array, and it is for the longevity and the recyclability of this material as well. So it is around sustainability.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any additional questions for our registrants on this item? Seeing none, thank you both. And we'll move on. Our next item with registrants wishing to speak is item 83, which you will forgive me if I do not read all of the addresses. It is amending the 2026 EDD land banking program to add funds from TID 44 and authorizing the execution of a purchase and sale agreement with RDC Development for the purchase of 17 properties with multiple addresses for land banking purposes and authorizing the expenditure of funds for environmental assessment, title work, closing costs, holding costs, and necessary demolition work and pre-development costs for the same properties, all totaling $6.2 million in District 15. On item 83, we have one registrant wishing to speak, Bonnie Rowe of District 11. Bonnie?
Good evening, Chair and members of the Common Council. I looked at the legislative file and the appraisal on this item, and what I found really troubles me. This legislation authorizes paying $5.2 million for land our assessor values at $1.5 million. That gap, 3.5 times the assessed value, appears nowhere in the public record with any explanation. The appraisal covers only 6 of the 17 parcels. The other 11 carry high voltage transmission lines and can never be developed. No appraisal exists for any of them. The city hasn't told the public what portion of $5.2 million it's paying for land it can never build on. Those aren't assets, they're liabilities. The appraisal itself has serious problems. The most relevant comparables available are nowhere in the report. The appraiser applies a market value standard to what is clearly a disposition sale, resulting in a higher value than the facts warrant. Over $350,000 in unverified costs are folded into the land values. One parcel is valued as though a rezoning has occurred that hasn't even been requested. These are defects contrary to the standards that the appraiser certified the appraisal complied with. The Finance Committee voted unanimously to recommend approval without requesting the appraisal or the assessed value, and without raising any of these questions. And here's what strikes me the most. When my family takes on a major project, we don't just confirm that we have the money in the bank for the down payment. We make sure we'll have enough to finish what we start. The city should hold itself to the same standard. This resolution commits $6.2 million to a project with no development plan, at least not that's been presented to the public. No cost estimate to complete development of these properties, and no analysis of whether TID 44 can recover the investment before it closes.
About a minute left.
I respectfully ask that you refer this to a future meeting so the Finance Committee and staff can do their jobs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have no other registrants wishing to speak on item 83. Are there any questions for the registrant? Seeing none, that will bring us to the end of, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I spoke too soon. Alder Pritchett, questions?
A quickie question. How many appraisals were there?
It's time for questions for registrants, not for staff.
For the registrant?
Right? I'm not sure that's a question that she can answer, but
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question? I didn't realize that was for
How
me.
many appraisals were there?
I saw a list with several of them comparing our city's assessed values with Booson's values, and I can't remember exactly how many were on that list, but I think it was probably around 7.
And
I
second,
don't know that they've all been appraised.
and second,
Yeah, I'm
que-
sure the staff has more information than I do on this, but partly because not much of this is
and second
available to the
question,
public.
in your findings, were there consistencies?
Consistencies or inconsistencies? I just feel that there's a lot of missing facts, like what will happen with these properties that are not able to be developed. Why is there such a contrast between what our city has appraised these properties at and what the developer company has, or appraisal has shown? And until those can be clarified for the public, I think, maybe many of you don't know the answers to those questions either, and to vote on it without having the information seems premature to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Alder. I think your questions are likely questions that staff can answer when we get to that point.
I'll get to that as well. I want to get it from both ends.
Yep, thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, and that is the last item that we have registrants wishing to speak on. So we will move on to item 5, which again is Legistar 91958, an appeal of the Madison Landmarks Commission denying a certificate of appropriateness for 1123 Jennifer Street, an exterior alteration in the Third Lake Ridge Historic District for a roof replacement in District 6. On item 5, with the body's indulgence, I think we'll start with an explainer from staff and then move on. So Director Tuttle.
Good evening. I'll start with an overview of what the action is for the council's consideration tonight and a little bit of background on the specific issue. You've already heard about some of it in the public comments tonight. And then I welcome Heather Bailey, who is our preservation planner that's here tonight with us, and Kate Smith, who's our assistant city attorney online, to help answer specific questions that you might have about this matter. So as you've heard tonight, this item is an appeal of a Landmarks Commission decision, specifically a denial to issue a certificate of approval for a roof replacement at 1123 Jennifer Street. This is a home that's in the Third Lake Ridge Historic District. Your role tonight is to review this appeal and make a determination as to whether the commission appropriately applied its standards from MGO 41, which is the ordinance that governs landmarks and properties within landmark districts. In this process, you'll be acting as what we call a quasi-judicial body, which means that the question in front of you is not a matter of policy or preference, but rather application of the standards in the ordinance and a determination as to whether those standards were followed. In this case, you'll specifically be looking at whether the commission's action compared to the standards of the ordinance, including the standards for granting a certificate of approval for a new exterior alteration in MGO 4118, and the standards for that alteration itself for roof replacement materials, both the general standards and the standards regarding roof materials in 4125. After considering the Landmarks Commission's action, the council may take any of the following actions. And it's really important that as you make a decision about that action, you state findings for your decision in this case. First, you could deny the appeal. This would be an appropriate action if the council finds that the Landmarks Commission denial complied with the standards of the ordinance or followed the ordinance. You could approve the appeal and either reverse the decision or modify the decision of the Landmarks Commission. This would be an appropriate action if you find that the Landmarks Commission's decision was contrary to the standards, or you can reference a way that the standards were incorrectly interpreted or applied to this application. Or you could refer this back to the Landmarks Commission with a specific finding and direction about how the commission's action was incomplete or insufficient, and with specific direction about how it should be reevaluated. So as you've heard, the issue that's before you in terms of this appeal is about the roof replacement material that was proposed to be located on 1123 Jennifer Street. The Landmarks Ordinance, MGO 41, does allow for replacement and alternative materials as long as they replicate the historic materials that were being replaced. In this case, the applicant was requesting to replace asphalt shingles with a metal standing seam roof. The staff advised the applicant that this was not a permissible roof material and provided a number of alternative examples that could be approvable. Projects such as this roof replacement material typically fall into a type of project that can be approved by the staff as long as the work complies with the ordinance standards. In cases where the staff advise that the project cannot be approvable, an applicant can propose their project to the Landmarks Commission and receive a determination from the Landmarks Commission. That's the process that the applicant followed here. In applying to the Landmarks Commission, the applicant provided other examples of standing seam metal roofs within the Third Lake Ridge Historic District. However, staff addressed these examples in its report to the Landmarks Commission and noted that these were either approved under a prior version of the ordinance, the Landmarks Ordinance, were non-residential buildings of a different age than the subject property, were recent construction, or were not actually in the historic district itself. Ultimately, after reviewing this, the Landmarks Commission found that the proposal did not meet its standards for approval because the standing seam roof was not a compatible roofing material for the building's architectural style in this district, that there was no precedent for roofing material found historically on these types of buildings within the district, and that the applicant had alternative roofing materials that could meet the standards. So I'll leave any other information that we can help provide about this process or about the specific request and appeal to Heather and Kate to help us answer, and happy to help in other ways as I can.
Okay, so let's proceed with questions for staff. And just noting that at some point we will need to get a motion. You've heard what your three options are, but I suspect that questions for staff will perhaps suggest a direction or a motion that somebody might want to make. So we'll start with questions for staff. Alder Pritchett.
Okay. Could you tell me, what's the circuit date of this particular property?
Just a moment, Alder, let me pull that up.
I can't hear.
Oh, there it is, sorry. The date of construction for this property is 1910. I'm sorry, the date of construction for this property is 1910.
1910?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the second question, in the particular commission's ordinance, you mentioned materials being compatible, and we know we can't get those materials now, but you did say, but the ordinance does not include information related to getting like an updated version of it.
I'm not sure I understand your question, Alder. The ordinance does allow for alternative materials. It needs to replicate the appearance of shingles. So it could be an asphalt shingle. It could be there are metal roofing materials that we have approved that replicate the appearance of shingles. There are other types of composite materials, but it's really about the appearance. Does it replicate the appearance of shingles?
Was this suggested to them?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you define replicate?
So it needs, the Landmarks Commission evaluates if the proposed replacement material replicates the appearance of the historic. And so there's a whole long list of stuff that comes from a state statute about the profiles, the texture, but it details with, does it adequately replicate the appearance of that material? And so there are times where, well, we have plenty of product samples in the office for looking at, because Seeing pictures is one thing, seeing them in real life is another. And so we do occasionally have where we look at product samples with the entire commission, because materials are always changing. And so to be able to say, no, this particular type of material could never work, they're constantly changing. So we regularly evaluate proposed materials and look at the product samples to look and sometimes touch and sometimes do a little destructive testing on them to make sure that they replicate the appearance of historic materials.
Now, I asked that question primarily because of this. At one time, people were transitioning from regular asphalt type shingles to metal roofing. At one time, you could not get a metal roof with alternate shingles. They were all straight line, vertical lines. But today, you can. You can look at many rooftops, and they are pretty much, they look the same as an asphalt shingle.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to fast forward to to this particular situation. This particular project is looking for, I assume, something solar. Is that true?
They have not applied for solar at this moment in time, but we do approve solar on roofs in the historic districts.
Then let's assume then they can get solar panels.
Yes.
That look like a reasonable facsimile of. Would this be possible?
We have approved at least one, maybe more, of the solar shingles. And so, yes, that is also an option.
And if so, would that be consistent with following the rules and regs of the ordinance?
For the materials that we have looked at that are solar shingles, they still look like shingles. So, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Matthews, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I think right now I maybe just have one follow-up. With solar panels, would the only option be the shingle panels, or are historic buildings able to get like bigger ones?
Yes, they're able to get bigger ones. So there's specific standards in the ordinance for solar panels. Those are considered removable because they are. And so the standards are that they have to be installed so that they are parallel to the roof plane. Because otherwise, sometimes you'll see particularly older installations where they're way up high and it looks kind of like a spaceship crashed into the roof. We're not going for that look. So it's something that would be parallel to the roof plane. And if you drive around the historic districts, you'll see that there are many houses with solar panels in place.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa-Cole?
Thank you, Mayor. Heather, does the ordinance refers to the look of that particular residence or the look on the district as a whole?
Mm-hmm. So there's multiple standards under alterations. And so there's the specific roofing standards that talk about finding comparables or what is the precedent for what has been on this building, and asking you to provide the evidence of for making your case for what kind of material you're wanting to use. But then there's also the general standards that talk about adding in conjectural details. So this is a situation where we don't have an example of that historic material ever having been on this particular building or similar historic resources. But also, this would be adding in a conjectural detail for a standing seam metal roof on this style of house. Does that answer your question, Alder?
So if there was this type of roof that they want to use across the street or somewhere within the district, will they be able to do this, or will they not be able to do this because this house in particular didn't have this kind of roof?
Sure. So it's a little bit of both. For the types of roofs that we would see on buildings. So there's the two residential buildings that are historic resources in the district that currently have metal standing seam roofs. And those were approved kind of back to back in 2011 under the old Third Lake Ridge Historic Ordinance, which didn't talk about roofs at all. So the Land Ridge Commission was largely relying on precedent at the time. But in looking at comparable buildings, there are Mediterranean revival style buildings that have barrel clay tiles for their roof cladding. That would be adding a conjectural feature if we put it on this house, because it's not a Mediterranean revival building and it's never had that type of roofing on it. So we are looking for compatible for this particular building.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Planner Bailey, I think you've answered this a bit, but just to put a finer point on it. So is it correct that we don't know what roofing was there when this house was built, 1123 was built? Is that correct?
I do not have an original building permit. No, the oldest building permit I have is from the 1940s.
And so then not knowing that, what we're going off of is comparable buildings in the area?
Yes, we do have information on the types of buildings and historic pictures that show what we've had in Madison. And we do not have evidence of standing seam metal roofs being on residential buildings in Madison. If there is evidence of that, I would really love to see that. What we have for the Third Lake Ridge Historic District are two buildings where Land Ridge Commission approved those roofs because their standards at the time didn't talk about roofs.
And then lastly, so the applicants gave a number of examples of what they thought were comparable metal roofs in the district, but they were on different sorts of buildings or buildings that you determined were not to be?
Sure. So there's the, 517 Baldwin was one of the ones that was approved in 2011. 943 Williamson was approved right after that in 2011. And they cited the precedent of the Baldwin. So those are two historic houses that could be used as comparables, but those have non-historic roofs that were approved under the old ordinance. And historically, they didn't have metal roofs. For the other examples that came in as comparables, there were two that were new construction, and both of those have, so 1037 Williamson was constructed in 2001, and it does have a shingle roof, but there is a tower element on it that has metal roofing, and we expect to see that type of material on architectural features, but the roof is shingle. The tower has metal on it. 826 Williamson is new construction that was constructed in 2023, and that building has a flat roof, and so any type of material is allowed on a flat roof. But it does have these projecting window bays that, for architectural terms, are called oriel windows, and that is a slightly pitched roof, and so it does have metal on top of that. Again, it's an architectural detail, but it's a new construction. It's not a historic resource. And then 1012 Williamson is a commercial building that was constructed outside of the period of significance, is 1958, but also it's a commercial building. So Tracty, if you don't know, which is a Madison institution, they look kind of like Quonset huts. They've got a barrel roof, but unlike Quonsets, the barrel doesn't come all the way down. It's got vertical sides, but so it's got this barrel roof and then it's got the false front on it. So it's outside of the period of significance for the district. The district period of significance is 1850 to 1929. So it's a commercial building. It's a barrel roof, and it's not a historic resource. And then the other comparable was a metal roof on a garage that is just outside of the historic district. So Land Ridge Commission wasn't involved in approving the roof on that particular structure.
Great. And then just one final question. So I serve on the Urban Design Commission, and we have a number of design districts around the city that have requirements on what's appropriate. But then lots of the city is somewhat vibes based on what we're looking at, if it's compatible with the area or not. But what I understand is that that is not, you have a completely different set of standards for historic districts on what's appropriate or not. You would agree with that?
Yes.
Because
So
it's dictated by the ordinance in a specific way that must be followed.
sorry, could you say that question
Oh,
again?
sorry, but the design requirements or for changes are dictated by the landmarks ordinance itself.
Yes.
On what can be
And so there's different levels of intervention, and so there's standards for alterations. And that's what we're dealing with this particular project. It's an alteration to an existing structure, and it's a historic resource. There's also standards for additions, there's standards for new construction, and so those standards were developed to address that particular type of intervention on a property.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovitz?
Thank you, Mayor. A few questions. So is the house at 517 South Baldwin still considered a historic resource even though it was approved under the old ordinances?
It is still considered a historic resource, yes.
Okay. And do you know what the architectural style of that building is?
Of 517 Baldwin?
Yes.
It also underwent some significant changes. I would loosely call it a vernacular mid-century house, mid-19th century house.
Okay. And what is the architectural style of the building under question?
So the building in question, it's an American four square, which is a form of building. It's not an architectural style. So four squares tended to have lots of different decorative elements applied to them. And this is an interesting one. It's unusual. But it's loosely got some Italian Renaissance revival elements with the dentils. But it's got the typical of a four square. It's got a flared hip roof, and it's got a central dormer on each side. But these have unusually large dormers, and then those dormers are fairly decorative. They've got clipped gable and gable returns. There's a lot of roof elements happening on this particular building.
Okay. I think you call it folk Victorian in your report.
Folk Victorian is probably, it's late Victorian period. And even though Queen Vic was well past at that point, that is still falling into, you get this transition time where people are still pulling elements from old forms of architecture and applying them to the new. So this is really transitional. It's a four square form, which is not a Victorian style of building, but it's pulling that late Victorian architectural elements to this building. So a lot of times the architecture doesn't fit into one particular pretty box.
Okay. And then last question, for our local standards, and I suppose also the national historic standards, when we are preserving the architectural features of a building, is that related to the architectural features of that style locally, or is that the architectural style as it's known?
Yes, very much locally. And so, but I have previously worked on sort of the state level scales, and with that, I've dealt with situations where people will say like, well, I saw a building in New Orleans that had this, so I want to put it here. Okay, that is the very definition of a conjectural detail. So Frankensteining a building by picking architectural elements from different time periods, different architectural styles that don't have any precedent on that particular building, that would be a conjectural approach.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Duncan?
Sorry, there you go. I know thank you, Mayor and Heather, when we were meeting at the Landmarks Commission, you had a presentation that showed the houses and then also the houses that the applicant was referencing. Is there a way that we could potentially just walk through those if you have that presentation available?
It is, I am not on the Zoom, but we could pull it up. Yes, Holder, we could do that. If you give us a moment, sorry.
Email it to the clerk or?
It is on the file.
It is on the file.
Oh, okay.
It's entitled Staff Presentation. Thank you.
Just give us a minute, Alder. We're working out the technicality here.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, so at Landmarks Commission meetings, the way I open it is, so this is a relatively recent Google Street View of the property in question. So there you see the flared hipped roof and then the large gables in the middle with the clipped gable end and the gable returns that really sort of flank it in on each side. And so there's a dormer like that on the front and one on each side. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the proposed work was to replace the roof. And so this is from the application materials and showing the existing roof and the proposed replacement material. A view of the roof, and then, yeah, looking at the comparables. So we have 517 Baldwin, and so that is the building that was very altered in 2011, taken down to the studs. And with that, they replaced the roof and installed a standing seam metal roof. The building on the right is the new construction, new construction relatively speaking, constructed in 2001. It does have a shingle roof, but there is, yeah, there you go with the mouse on it. There is a metal roofing on the turret, on the tower. There on the left, 1012 Williamson is the Track D building with the false front on it. And now that you've seen that, if you haven't been looking for them, they're all over town. The building on the right is 430 South Thornton, and that is just outside of the Third Lake Ridge Historic District. And this is a view of 826 Williamson. As you can see, it is known as the Irwin, on the site of the former Strucken Irwin. And it is a flat roof building, but the applicant was calling out the roofing on the projecting window bays there, the oriel windows, which again is an architectural feature, and it is a shallow pitched roof, and flat and shallow pitched roofs for new construction are allowed to have any kind of building material. And then that gets into our standards of approval. Was that what you wanted, Alder?
Yes, thank you so much. And then I just had a follow-up question. With regards to the 517 one that was extensively remodeled in 2011, that's not under the current rules. It was on the previous rules, and that's why a metal roof was able to be put on that property, correct?
Yes, and examples like that were part of the discussion with the landmarks ordinance update process, was that there were changes happening in the historic districts that were impacting what we call the historic integrity. These places are places to tell authentic history. It's not saying that these places need to be frozen in time. We do not want that. We want people to be able to reinvest in these places. And so we do have many approvals happening in our historic districts. Last year we had, I think, 238 certificates of approval for our historic properties. Lots of people are doing work, and the largest portion of the work is happening in Third Lake Ridge. But the style of work has changed since the new ordinance. And so the new ordinance, it was adopted in 2022, and so that's what we've been operating since then. But learning the new process and the new rules takes time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Pritchett?
I'm hearing several mixed messages now. And the messages, in some ways, I think the property owner is being penalized. And in some ways, we're asking for properties in this particular district to be preserved. If the property owner is trying to preserve the overall integrity and looks of this particular building, perhaps it's time to go back and look at the ordinance. The ordinance has to be addressed. And I do realize that you cannot account for each and every remodel or upgrade of a property. I understand that. but I also hope that there would be flexibility, with respect to whatever it is that the property owner wants to accomplish, and that could be written into the ordinance.
Are you headed towards a question?
That I'm asking for the ordinance to be revisited.
That's a legitimate ask, but not a question for staff.
It is a question. I'm asking.
Perhaps if you could ask staff if they think we could revisit the ordinance?
The question is this. Can we revisit the ordinance?
Yes, we can. We did a text amendment last year for updating some of the alteration standards and changing it from certificate of appropriateness to certificate of approval as well. So yes, we can revisit the ordinance.
I think we would just need to be clear about what policy choice we're trying to advance in these cases. I think when we talk about the specific standards of the landmark ordinance, the ordinance that we have today was a multi-year, maybe a many-year process.
It was a 7-year process for updating the historic district standards.
And so I think as we think about how we keep this ordinance relevant over time and make sure that it is helping us achieve our goals within the historic district, we would just need to be really clear about what it is that we think needs to be addressed and adjusted.
Thank you, Alder. If I could ask a follow-up question. Planner Bailey, if it was the council's will to update the ordinance, would that have any impact on this appeal tonight?
No, because the appeals standards require it's a quasi-judicial process. This is really likely something Kate Smith should probably speak to. And so the Common Council tonight is looking at, did the Landmarks Commission apply its rules correctly? And if that is not currently a rule, then that isn't a rule the Landmarks Commission could have used. If that is something for us to do a text amendment with, then that would be for future applications. We're dealing with the rules that were in place at the time that Landmarks Commission made its decision.
Thank you. And Alder Madison.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was a social sciences person, so please answer my questions with that in mind.
Yes, ma'am.
So as I'm sitting here trying to get my head wrapped around it and going to Google Maps and looking at the pictures and looking at the project that was done, I think on Baldwin Street. And if I understand correctly, the Baldwin Street was done before the update on the ordinance. You got to scoot back so I can see her. Thank you so much. So it was done before then. And I guess I know it doesn't apply, but I'm curious, would the current homeowners who are here with us tonight, would their project fit within the rules before the rules were changed? I'm just curious.
I think for under the old ordinance that, again, didn't talk about roofing, and there were two different precedents, again, both in 2011, saying, well, if you're going to do a metal roof, it needs to be this particular type of metal roof. My answer would be yes, because Landmarks Commission approved those in 2011.
Yep, gotcha. And then I guess and I'm not sure if I missed it from the homeowners, but I'm also curious, because it looks like the ordinance was updated in 2022, how long they were considering this project or own the property, or were, because sometimes homeowners are like working on stuff for like 8 to 12 years or whatever. I'm a renter, so that's just what I hear. So I can't even tell you if that's the truth. But from people complaining about their home projects, it seems that sometimes they take a long time. So I'm curious, could they have been in discussion or working towards this while we were updating our rules? Like, I'm just trying to understand.
Sure. So the property owners have changed, and so I believe y'all have been the property owners for 2 years. Yeah, they say yes. So we do every other year we do a mailing out to owners of historic properties, because we don't want to have a situation where when they show up for a building permit, they're told, oh no, this doesn't meet the standards, and this is the first time that they're hearing about it or learning about it. It is a required disclosure for real estate when you buy, but there's no requirement that the real estate agents explain to you what that means. So we did a postcard last year. We do it in the odd number years to send out to all property owners to say, any exterior work that you're doing on the property needs a certificate of approval, and here's where you can find information about that process. But then people get a lot of mail as well. I went to a meeting with the Marquette Neighborhood Association shortly after we did the new ordinance, but I mean, that was 4 years ago. And so I don't remember if it was 4 years ago or 3 years ago that I went out to meet with them, but that wouldn't overlap with the time that these folks own the property. So we are doing outreach, but obviously we're not getting to all the people.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just trying to still, and I hear what you're saying, but so for the homeowners, and I don't know if I can go back and ask my question, but this is what we're at 2026, so they would have bought the property somewhere around 2024, 2023-ish?
I believe so.
And then when would these notifications have gone out? Because I think you said an odd year, so 2025?
So 2025, 2023.
Gotcha. And then my other question is, they were talking about sustainability, and then Madison loves a good sustainability conversation. So I'm also curious, how does sustainability, is it a goal within the landmarks district or districts? Like, is that a consideration, or?
So the sustainability of individual materials, no, that isn't something that we take into consideration. When we did the ordinance update, we were really going from the standards that were in place with the state statute, and also looking at examples of best practices across the country. And it's about, does it replicate the historic materials? So with that, one of the alders at the time wanted us to ban everything vinyl because it's toxic and it's not good for the environment. But that is not one of our standards, because if it adequately replicates the appearance of wood, per state statute, we have to approve it. So that's part of the regularly evaluating materials. With that, under the new ordinance, we have been approving some of the vinyl handrails that you wouldn't know that wasn't painted wood. They've gotten they used to be terrible, but now they really do look like painted wood. And same thing with decking materials on porches. We are approving PVC that looks like wood. You wouldn't know that wasn't painted wood. So there are constantly new materials. We're not looking at the sustainability or the environmental impact of a particular material. We're looking at, does it replicate the appearance of historic materials?
Gotcha. And then I think my maybe last question, do you mind just pulling up again, as a social sciences person, the presentation again and help me understand what they're proposing will make the roof look different? Like,
sure.
Just like I'm telling you, like fifth grade explanation.
Yeah, no worries.
How is it going to look different?
Okay, so it's not going to take an expert to be able to look at the house and say, that is a metal standing seam roof. It's going to very much look like metal. And
I got astigmatism. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So,
I'm high needs.
Okay, so right now, you can see that there's shingles on that building. It's asphalt shingles.
Okay.
And going to a metal standing, so the reason why they call it a metal standing seam, could we go back to the picture with the panels?
And those were the ones in the right, or the panels in the top right?
There we go. Okay.
All right.
So these are individual panels, and the way they hook together is they've got, there's like a hook, and then there's another hook that goes on top, and so they join together. And so the standing seam is where those two things come together. It points up, so it's standing up. Okay. So you would see then the standing up lines all over this roof, and if we go to the Baldwin building, in places where we have seen metal roofs on buildings, it tends to be something like this, where it's a relatively simple roof form, where you don't have a bunch of dormers and returns and stuff, where you would have the metal bits sticking out in a bunch of different directions. in the places historically, wider regionally, where you might see it on like a farmhouse. Although even with farmhouses, they tended to do shingles for a fancier look on the farmhouse, and they would do standing seam on the barn. So for the roof that we're talking about with this house, we need to replicate the appearance of a shingle roof.
Gotcha.
And I think just while we have this photo up,
Yeah.
this photo actually has kind of the opposite of what some of the other examples that Heather has shared, where sometimes metal can be what I would call more of like an accent material on some of the features of the house. This example at Baldwin has the standing seam roof on most of the roof, and then you can see on the porch, it looks like it might have some kind of an asphalt shingle or some other kind of shingle. So it's kind of the opposite of the way we sometimes see this material application.
Gotcha. And then, okay, I appreciate the fifth grade explanation. So my last question, I think, is more so then about if the homeowners are concerned about sustainability and material that they believe will be more sustainable. So then I guess I'm trying to understand other options that still get you, that meets the landmarks rules, that meets their sustainability wants.
Sure.
Like, I'm trying to understand that.
So if they want to do metal roofing, we have approved metal roofing. There are, and I should have hauled it over from it because I've got one next door. There are roofing panels that rather than coming in up and down like that standing seam that you saw, they go horizontal across the roof and they look like shingles. Now you can get them so that they are shiny, glossy finish, and then they really look like metal. But the manufacturers, a lot of them also offer a matte finish, or they apply a little bit of grit on top so it looks like asphalt shingles. And you would be really hard pressed to be able to look at that and not go, oh, that's a metal roof. Even I, who look at a lot of these, sometimes I have to stop and really look close and be like, is that a metal roof or is that a shingle roof? Because they look like shingles.
And then just one last follow-up, sorry. The cost difference between what they are considering and what you say might be sort of an exception, or not exception, but another option. Are these sort of in the same price range, or one is drastically
So
different?
we're not looking at
y'all don't
price
even-
ranges for materials.
See,
We're just looking at the
Gotcha.
appearance. Now, asphalt shingles are also recyclable. There's environmental concerns about their production, but they are recyclable. And they do have, depending on what type of architectural shingle you get, they do tend to have fairly long warranties. So do they have as long of a warranty as a metal roof? That would take more analysis and in-depth, but there are plenty of architectural shingles, which are asphalt shingles, that have a long warranty and they are recyclable. But that is not what Landmarks Commission is taking into consideration.
Sustainability
I
and
understand.
cost are neither standards.
Are not y'all, or it's not y'all lane or bag. Yeah, I got you. All righty. I think that answers my questions, because I'm just trying to really make it make sense for me. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Matthews?
Thank you, Mayor. I am not sure if this is something that's relevant, so if not, that is fair. But would it be appropriate to, for you to kind of share like a little bit about the variances part of the ordinance?
Sure. So we have several variance options that are meant to be relief valves for unforeseen circumstances, unusual situations. And so if someone wanted to apply for a variance, that would need to be a new submission and the variance has to be tied to a request. So it could be a new application tying it to the variance. But the variance needs to cite unusual circumstances. It can't just be, but this is what I want to do. It has to cite a hardship of some persuasion.
Okay, and I guess if I can just ask you quick, and again, if this is out of order, that is understandable. Well, yeah, never mind. I think you covered it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Pritchett, additional questions?
Yes. I'm not going to beat it to death, but the question is this. Have you taken a look-see at other cities with historic districts to see what they have done, you know, with respect to upgrading roofing and things like that? And I asked that question primarily because when you said that the date for this house was built was 1910.
Yes.
And we know, you know, that materials have changed. You know, we know that different architects will integrate one kind of way of looking at building a house into something else, turning it into something else. It could be Tudor, it could be Victorian, it could be a whole lot of other things. It's a mishmash. So the question is, has there been an attempt to look at other cities of comparable size with historic districts to see how do they go about handling
Absolutely.
these kinds of things, especially as it applies to ordinances?
Absolutely. So yes, there's conversations among the communities that have historic districts within Wisconsin. So every year I go to the Wisconsin Association of Historic Preservation Commission's annual conference, and we talk through projects. There's also the State Local History Conference, which also doubles as the Historic Preservation Conference. And 2 years ago, Mary Rose Eckberg, who's the Community and Cultural Resources Planner, she and I did a conference session called Historic-ish. And it was about our process for doing alternative materials, because Madison has probably the most progressive approach to alternative materials in the state. And a lot of communities are very strict on the materials that they allow as replacements. So something like fiber cement board siding, Milwaukee will not approve that. We do. So people wanted to hear how our approach was. Last year, I did a national webinar for the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions about our approach to window replacements, because one of the things with the ordinance process was introducing language to allow for replacement of architectural features if they had a positive test for lead paint. And so we talked about that, and there was very divided for the national audience for allowing for replacement due to lead paint, because very traditionalists know you keep it and you do abatement. And a lot of other folks were like, wow, this is really progressive. I'm like, this is Madison. That's how we do things. So yes, there are lots of conversations, and we are engaging at both a state and a national level with those conversations.
Have you been to New Orleans since Katrina?
Oh, have I been since Katrina? I don't think so, ma'am.
That's one place I think it would offer golden opportunities to look at Katrina before, Katrina after, with respect to the preservation of that particular district. It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovitz? No? No. Alder Evers? Alder Evers?
Yes, sorry, Mayor. Thank you. Got distracted there for a second. And Heather, if you could answer this, or perhaps it would be Assistant City Attorney Kate Smith. You know, I'm not a huge fan of these historic districts, but we have them. And as you said, there's an educational process by which people are informed. And generally, I think that they learn about it pretty quickly. If they move into an historic district, that'll make it more challenging. Kate, if you could, the task before us isn't whether we like historic districts or not, whether we think that they're punitive and unfair, whether this increased the cost for residents. Can you explain what it means to be a quasi-judicial body and have to make a decision based on certain elements that are factual, that are objective, and help us so that our emotions won't enter into the discussion, but we can look just at the facts, as difficult as that might be. Thank you.
Of course. So what you are doing is you're acting like judges. So you are looking at the facts and you're applying to the law to the facts. And in this case, you're examining how Landmarks Commission applied their standards to the materials that were presented before to them through the application materials, through public testimony, through Preservation Planner Bailey's presentation. And it's important, as you said, to not kind of change the rules halfway through the game, right? So you're looking at how the Landmarks Commission applied the law to the facts that were presented to them. And as a reminder, that this decision, like any other decision that you make when you are acting as a quasi-judicial body, if it was to be appealed to circuit court, the circuit court would examine whether or not your decision was arbitrary or capricious. So whether or not you kind of fairly applied the law as it is written to the facts that were presented to it, instead of applying policy decisions or other standards that were not before the Landmarks Commission and before the applicant at the time of their application.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up. Then our vote tonight isn't about whether or not we think the ordinance should be revised, is adequate for the task at hand, or that, could be improved if we compared with other cities. It's really about, did Landmarks apply the ordinance as it is written fairly and objectively, whether we personally feel comfortable or all the emotions and sympathy we may have for the applicant. Really, it's about were the standards applied accurately and correctly. Sorry to ask you to just reinforce that one more time.
No, correct, Alder. So, as the Common Council, sometimes you act in a legislative capacity and sometimes you act in a quasi-judicial capacity. And if you wanted to change the ordinance, that would be kind of in your legislative capacity, which we can do at a request with some policy directions, as Director Tuttle has explained. But that's not what the scope of your review is for this particular situation.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Martinez Rutherford.
Thank you, Mayor. I am not sure which one of you this should go to, but I'm curious about the variances that you allow and the hardship threshold, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Alder, I'm pulling up the variances. Okay, so variances are under Madison General Ordinances 41.19, if anybody else wants to follow along. We have the different categories are economic hardship, historic design, alternative design, and projects which are necessary for the public interest. And each of those variances have particular standards.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Matthews. Alder Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one more question. I'm sorry. Can you speak to how common it is to not have that explicit evidence of the material from during the historic period?
We're asking applicants to provide evidence to support their case they want to make a change. So what is your evidence for this being a way you want to approach it? I wish I could think of the project off the top of my head, but under the new ordinance, it was actually shortly after we adopted the new ordinance, there was a house that had a front porch that had undergone a lot of changes over time, none of them particularly sympathetic. So they looked at comparable historic resources in the vicinity within 200 feet. And they looked at similar types of houses and drew on the evidence for these types of porches are on these houses. We do not have details on the architectural style of what the front porch on that particular house was, but they were drawing from comparable examples. And so they use that to make a case for, we want this style of house. There's a similar house, architecturally similar to our house, one street away. It looks like this. We want to do this design. That met the standards of approval.
Okay, I think, I mean, that
is it common? I would say, well, I don't know about how common, but people, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, you're okay. I just want to, everything you said was great, but I just want to clarify my question before you go on.
Sure.
So I was coming from the, like, how common is it in a historic district to not have, for us, the city, to not have that historic evidence of exactly what the house looked like during the historic period?
In terms of how common, I don't know how to measure that. That's part of why with a historic district, you have a collection of historic resources. So if you don't have the forensic evidence on your building, be it with historic pictures, or sometimes you do some destructive investigation, lift up the siding, see what's underneath. Sometimes with roofing, people, well, as additions get added, sometimes they leave the historic roofing there, and if they get up in the attic, they find, oh, yeah, there's wood shingles, so this had a shingle roof at some point. So sometimes you can do some forensic investigation. In terms of how often do we not have any kind of evidence, I don't know. I don't know how to measure that. It is not particularly common. The reason why we have these historic districts is because they're a collection of historic resources. So we've got this body of resources to draw from when we don't have specific evidence for a specific property.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Okowitz. I think you keep pressing your button. Is it for real this time?
It's real.
Okay, Alder Okowitz.
This is a question for Kate. Just following up on Alder Evers' questions. If the applicants were to apply for a variance, would that change the scope of what the Common Council or Landmarks Commission is allowed to consider?
So before you isn't a review of the variance. So it's that a variance would be a separate application, and the Landmarks Commission would examine it on those merits and make a decision. If they had applied for a variance, been approved or denied, that would also be appealable to Common Council. That would come to you in a separate action. But an option before you is not to give the applicant a variance. They would have to start a new application.
Right, so we still have to make an action on the appeal that's in front of you, but you would be using the standards for a variance if the applicants were to apply for a variance, take it to the Landmarks Commission, and then if it were to come before you for any reason.
Yep, and that's exactly what I was asking about the standards. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other Alders with questions. Attorney Smith, did you want to sum up something?
I thank you, Mayor, and I apologize for speaking again. I just wanted to take the opportunity to remind, since Director Tuttle had done it at the beginning, that as you're acting in a quasi-judicial capacity, whatever motion that you make should include the reasons behind it or findings for the record.
Yes, thank you, Attorney Smith. I was just about to go over the options and remind whoever might make a motion here that we do need to state reasons. So the options as laid out by Director Tuttle are to, 1, deny the appeal, 2, to approve the appeal and to either reverse or modify the Landmarks Commission decision, or to refer this back to Landmarks with some specific direction. So a simple referral back is insufficient. The council would have to give a specific direction to the body. So those are the options. And to remind again that we do need to state our reasons for the record. Let's see, Alder Knox, do you have an additional question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, would it be appropriate to refer back would a request for them to apply for a variance, or would that not be appropriate?
No, we have to take action on this item, and then they could choose to come back with a separate application.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers,
Thank you, Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion.
please.
I move to deny the appeal, not because I like doing so, but because I think factually speaking, Landmarks did not mess this up. They used the ordinance as it currently stands. The applicant can go back and apply for a variance. They did not make a hardship case, although in their public comment, they implied that that might be a factual matter. But I think if we're going to be a quasi-judicial body, we have to act and function like a quasi-judicial body. So I encourage my colleagues to support this denial. Thank you.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Alder Evers and Field. I heard a motion to deny on the basis that the Landmarks Commission correctly applied the standards of the ordinance. Is that what you said?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. All right, so we have a motion and a second before us. Is there discussion on the motion? Alder Uger.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to come at this from the standpoint of someone whose companies have installed thousands of roofs using just about every imaginable commercially available roofing material. And to the extent that informs me about relatives costs, because I think that indeed the situation we have here is all about what we all face when we're doing something, and that's the appellant's available budget to do something. Given the comparisons they've made, I can understand why they are urging us to consider something, because if I were them and that was the budget and those were the comparisons I had, I would opt, if I were going to install solar panels, for a standing seam, vertically oriented seams every time in terms of the relative cost and the longevity of the product. Now, I suppose the Strait of Hormuz might be closed long enough that the cost of situation could change, but at least with what I know at the present time, that's a logical decision on their part. On my screen, I just did because I look at roofing fairly often, I'm looking at a metal shingle roof, which I'm absolutely certain would meet the requirements of the current ordinance. It's expensive. And probably because it's complexity, there might be a little more damage involved when it had to be replaced sometime, given, of course, who knows what kind of solar panels may exist in 40 or 50 years. But I think that's the issue here. And again, because I've been sitting here looking for every possible way I could think of to justify approving this appeal. But given that, and thank you, Alder Evers, for asking those very pointed questions. As a quasi-judicial body, I do not see that we have, that the Landmarks Commission has missed the application of the ordinance here. We could do it with metal shingles that very well may not meet the available financing that the appellant has available. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Martinez Rutherford.
Thank you. I'm going to pontificate a little bit. As someone who struggles financially, I have great issue with a lot of our policies and ordinances in regards to preservation, because it often falls up on the people who are struggling the hardest to dish out more money when they don't have it. I find these rules very elitist, and I am sad to agree that as a quasi-judicial body, we are not, the threshold has not been met to approve the repeal. fight the system, change the system's internal young woman is angry about this, but I also understand the need for people to feel like they have control over things. So I am sad that I will be voting to reject this appeal, and I apologize to you. But I think this says so much more about how our systems don't prioritize people, they prioritize things over the people. So thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovitz?
Thank you, Mayor. Won't echo everything that's said, but do think that a lot of our historic preservation processes are not easy for the people who live in them. As a renter, I see a lot of substandard historic properties because owners don't want to pay the cost to renovate them up to the standards of what the Landmarks Commission would require, what our local standards would require. Additionally, I also find there's a bit of irony in that these historic standards try to preserve a sense of the place as it was at a certain time, but they totally ignore a lot of the processes. If this was the 1940s, the people living there would not think twice about building a more economic roof or installing solar panels. But here we have to keep asphalt shingles, an oil product, because it's what they had at the time and what was financially feasible. I also will be voting no, but I'm not happy about it, and I would be happy to consider a variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the words of all of my colleagues here. My constituents clearly love their home and are trying to do what's best for it. We're not talking about out-of-town developers who want to demolish a historic building. They really want the same thing that the ordinance does, which is to improve and maintain a historic home and make it better. But I think, as a lot of people have alluded to, occasionally our historic preservation comes into conflict with our ideas of sustainability. That doesn't mean one is right or wrong, but sometimes it's a conflict that we have to kind of pick one or the other at times. I do think that this sheds some light on needing to continue to work on our historic ordinances, which are good. We've done a lot of work, of course, a 7-year project to make it better. It's better than what it was. We can continue moving forward. But as our hands are somewhat tied in this being the way that we must rule in this, we can't do it based on just how it looks. I mean, in a vacuum, I think what they've proposed looks great. I think it's sustainable. It allows for mounting of solar panels, which are not historic, but we allow them. But as per the way the ordinance is written, I think there's only one way to go on it, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Matthews?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention, since I brought up, or I might have already been brought up, but I talked a lot about the variances. I don't want to, from my understanding of them, I don't know that they're written in a way that they're often able to be utilized. So I don't want to give the idea that if we say no tonight, or yes, I guess, to the motion, that they will definitely be able to get a variance as the ordinance is written. But I do think that, especially the economic hardship variance, that's the one I have the most experience with. I think we should continue that conversation, and that we can maybe figure something out to make it more accessible. And then I also just wanted to say, from the standpoint of a fairly new homeowner that has had to fix a lot of things already, and know not to say anything bad about the alder who said this, but someone mentioned wanting to fix up to the standard of the Landmarks Commission, and I just wanted to say that I'm sure there are also many situations where it's not a question of want, but of financial ability at all. And that not being able to fix things due to that cost increase, that seems to happen pretty often for folks, that not being able to do that maintenance is something that is penalized, I believe, under the current historic preservation writing, and also, you know, overall damages the building in the long term, even for what the historic preservation ordinance wants to uphold. So, but with all of that, I do agree as written. I don't know that we can do anything different tonight, but I just wanted to throw all that out there.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Pritchett.
Right now, I'm conflicted because I do believe that there are opportunities for the Landmark group to work with this particular owner. I'm also reminded too of some of the things that Alder Martinez Rutherford mentioned too. There's nothing permanent but change. That's going to happen. And so when I think about buildings that are of historical importance, structures that we rely on, we've seen years and years and years ago, and I'm just thinking about the Structure Notre Dame in France. I saw it primarily right before, 6 weeks before the fire, and I have seen it since then. And I know that they tried to replicate many of the materials that were in that structure at the time. Some of that they couldn't get. They had to go back and try and look at recipes for making this or making that. Now, when we think about a home, and it was built 1910, but I can guarantee you, in all probability, there are no records, architectural plans for that particular home. So absent that, and when you think about the ordinance that's in place now, there are some contradictions in there. I think it needs to be updated. And given that the updates, don't reflect what this particular owner wants to do, I think it's incumbent upon going back and looking at and trying to fix and or address that ordinance, especially those sections of it, that would be complicated by it's not this, it's not that. I do believe too that this particular homeowner is going to be penalized, simply because the ordinance doesn't say letter by letter by letter exactly what it is that they want it to say in order for this to come to fruition for their part, on their part. So I'm conflicted, but I do believe, at this point in time, change, let it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. So the motion before us is to deny the appeal. It's been seconded. Seeing no further discussion, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of denying the appeal? Alder Knox?
Yes, I object.
Are you asking for a roll call or?
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
So then the motion is to deny the appeal. All those in favor of denying the appeal, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Aye.
Alder Figueroa Cole, aye. Alder Glenn.
Aye.
Alder Glenn, aye. Alder Govindarajan.
Aye.
Alder Govindarajan, aye. Alder Uyghur. Alder Uyghur, aye. Alder Harrington McKinney. No. Alder Harrington McKinney, no. Alder Lankella. Aye. Alder Lankella, aye. Alder Knox. No. Alder Knox, no. Alder Madison. Aye. Alder Madison, aye. Alder Martinez Rutherford. Aye. Alder Martinez Rutherford, aye. Alder Matthews. Aye. Alder Matthews, aye. Alder Mayor. Aye. Alder Mayor, aye. Alder O'Brien. Aye. Alder O'Brien, aye. Alder Ohovich. Alder Ohovich, aye. Alder Pritchett. No. Alder Pritchett, no. Alder Tischler. Aye. Alder Tischler, aye. Alder Revere. Aye. Alder Revere, aye. Alder Vitever. Aye. Alder Vitever, aye. Alder Duncan.
Aye.
Alder Duncan, aye. Alder Evers.
Aye.
Alder Evers, aye. Alder Field.
Aye.
Alder Field, aye. We have 17 ayes, 3 noes.
With 17 ayes and 3 noes, the motion passes and the appeal is denied. President Vitiver.
May we take a 10-minute recess?
A 10-minute recess is moved. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, we'll take a 10-minute recess and come back at 8:26. Okay, I will call back to order the Common Council meeting of whatever date it is, and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Coming back from recess at 8:27 on March 10th, Alder Figueroa Cole.
Here.
Figueroa Cole is present. Alder Glenn.
Here.
Alder
Here.
Glenn. Alder Glenn is present. Alder Govindarajan.
Here.
Govindarajan is present. Alder Uyghur. Here. Uyghur is present. Alder Harrington McKinney. Alder Harrington McKinney is present. Alder Lankella. Here. Alder Lankella is present. Alder Knox. Alder Knox is present. Alder Madison. Here. Alder Madison is present. Alder Martinez Rutherford. Alder Martinez Rutherford is present. Alder Matthews. Here. Alder Matthews is present. Alder Mayor. Here. Mayor is present. Alder O'Brien. Here. O'Brien is present. Alder Ohovich. Alder Ohovich is present. Alder Pritchett. Here. Alder Pritchett is present. Alder Tischler. Alder Tischler is still present. Alder Revere. Here. Alder Revere is present. Alder Vitever. Here. Alder Vitever is present. Alder Duncan.
Here.
Alder Duncan is present. Alder Evers.
Here.
Alder Evers is present. Alder Field.
Here.
Alder Field is present. Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, our next item is item 83, which is Legistar 92015, amending the 2026 EDD Land Banking Program to add $4 million of GEO borrowing supported by TID 44, and authorizing the execution of a purchase and sale agreement with RDC Development LLC or their successors and assigns for the purchase of 17 properties addressed as 404 Cottage Grove Road, 514, 526, 533, and 551 Penny Street, 3752 Sargent Street, 3708 Olbrich Avenue, 702, 804, 808, 812, 816, 820, 824, 828, and 832 Royster Avenue, and 501 Grand Oak Trail, Madison, Wisconsin, 53714, for land banking purposes and authorizing the expenditure of funds for environmental assessment, title work, closing costs, holding costs, any necessary demolition work, and pre-development costs for the same property, all totaling $6.2 million in District 15. On item 83, President Vitiver, let's start with a motion, please.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt. And we will start with questions for staff on item 83, if there are any. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a question for staff, but I do. Would that involve a presentation?
You could ask staff to present on the item, Alder.
So I request the staff to present on item 8.3 in terms of their findings.
Thank you, Alder. We have Director Mikolajewski here. There we go.
Thank you, Alder. So just by way of background,
this resolution that's before you this evening would authorize budget amendment and us to proceed with the purchase of property from RDC Development just off of Cottage Grove Road through the city's land banking program. The intent that the staff had with this purchase was to purchase 6 properties through our land banking program for the purpose of facilitating residential development. Of the 6 properties that we intended to purchase, 5 would be used for residential development, and a 6th property would be used for a small neighborhood park. What's before you this evening is a financing plan that includes a budget amendment to provide TIF support towards that purchase. We'd also be using some existing land banking budget authority, as well as some money from the Parks Acquisition Fund. Through the course of negotiations with the owner of this property, in addition to the 6 properties that we want to purchase for that purpose and that we received an appraisal for, the owner of that property asked if we would take over ownership of 11 additional properties that are not developable within the subdivision. And those 11 properties are located under high voltage power lines, and therefore will likely, for any immediate or midterm, just simply not be able to be developed. And so the owner asked us if we would be willing to take over ownership of those 11 properties as part of the transaction because they really have no value to that developer. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions that others may have.
Alder Harrington McKinney, additional questions?
Follow-up question. Thank you for the presentation. I'd like for you to address, and we received a number of emails related to the cost differentiation. So could you speak more about the cost differentiation and also some of the quote facts that were missing, the analysis, appraisals? So could you speak specifically to those areas?
Sure. So as we do for all potential purchases of property by the city, or at least almost all potential purchases of property by the city, we retained outside third-party appraiser to appraise the 6 properties that we were going to be purchasing. And the appraiser took a look at those properties from the perspective of sites that are suitable for development and that we intend to develop. And the appraiser used the appraisal standards to identify a value for the properties of $5.2 million. As staff, we took a look at the appraisal, and we felt that it was a reasonable appraisal. There was nothing that suggested that we should reject that particular appraisal. As you indicated, the appraised value of those 6 properties is different from the city's assessed value for those 6 properties, and that is not unusual. There are different standards that are used by the city assessor to assess properties for the purpose of property taxes, compared with the standards that are used by appraisers to appraise property available for sale with the intention of redevelopment. And so as a result, yes, there is a difference between the assessed value of what are now vacant parcels and the appraised value of those from the purpose of a sale for ultimately development.
Additional questions, Alder?
Come back with the discussion.
Thank you, Alder. All right. I believe Alder Okovitz. No, Alder Knox was next.
So what's the difference in the appraised and the assessed values?
The appraised value of those 6 parcels was $5.2 million, and I don't have it immediately in front of me, but I believe the assessed value is around $1.4 million.
Okay, and does that 5.2 million include those additional properties that were offered up, or no?
No, the appraiser did not consider those additional 11 properties when completing the appraisal. At the time that we secured, actually, a slight correction, I have my colleagues are texting me as I speak. So the appraisal actually came back at 4.8 million, and we negotiated 5.2 million. It did not include those 11 parcels. At that time, our interest was simply buying the 6 properties that could be developed. It was only as we were in the midst of negotiations that the developer asked if we would take over ownership of those 11 additional properties.
Okay, what was that assessed again, 4 point?
I believe 1.4 million and some change.
I thought you. Is the difference? Okay, the difference is 1 point.
No, the assessed value of the, so I have a note here, the assessed value of the properties is 1.48 million.
Okay.
The appraised value was 4.8 million.
Okay. So the 5.2 million represents what?
So 5.2 million is the dollar amount that we negotiated with the owner of the property. And this is actually a very important point. Just because we get an appraised value for a certain dollar amount doesn't mean the owner of property wants to sell us the property for that amount of money. There's usually a negotiation that occurs, and the dollar amount that was settled upon was 5.2 million.
Okay, and so what represents those additional parcels? Do you have any, do they have no assessed value or what?
Those additional parcels do have an assessed value. It's likely de minimis, though, because again, there's a utility easement over the sites.
Okay, okay.
Yep. I'm getting a note here. The additional parcels are valued at $280,000 per the city assessor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovitz.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Do we have the city assessor online?
I don't think so, Alder.
That's okay. I'll get back to that in discussion. For Director Mikolajewski, is there any reason we couldn't attach the appraisal to the Legistar file?
Is there any reason we can't attach it?
Can we?
I mean, I think that we historically have not done that, but we probably could.
Okay. I would appreciate it if you could. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Mayor?
Thank you. Economic Director, can you tell me what the goal is of purchasing this land? What the future plan is? Would it be to sell it on to a developer? Would it be to partner with a developer for development, or keep some of it city-owned, for example, a park or some reason?
Yes. So one of the parcels would be utilized for a small neighborhood park. The remaining 5 parcels, in most cases, we would, as we do usually with our land banking program, is we would sell the properties to a third-party developer that would come in and develop them into housing. Now, there is always the possibility that the city could decide through the CDA that the city, via the CDA, would take on one or more of those parcels in terms of development. That would, though, be a decision that would have to come back to the council to make that decision to move forward in that regard.
So apart from the park, and then perhaps having the CDA involved, what would be the downside to the alternative of just letting some other private purchaser buy this? Why does the city need to step in?
Sure. So as has been mentioned, these parcels have been vacant for about 15 years since that neighborhood was replatted. We, through our land banking program, we look for opportunities to buy properties where we can, try to facilitate development, hopefully sooner rather than later. But it is a true statement that another private party could come in and buy one or all these properties and construct housing on them.
And then lastly, I assume this is not a goal, but is there a potential that the city could sell on this property later for a profit?
Technically, yes, okay. But just being practical, usually when we're partnering with developers, especially do any type of affordable housing, we usually don't profit.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Director Mikolajewski, could you just review the land banking, what the goals of the land banking policy are?
Sure. The goal of the land banking policy is to purchase property throughout the city for the intent to primarily support residential development, often affordable housing. And there are there's a policy with a set of parameters that identifies those properties that we might be interested in purchasing. And in this case, there are properties that have sat vacant for some time. And so we thought that, it was an opportunity for us to step in and hopefully have development occur sooner rather than later. And we also had, we have a TIF district that had some financial capability to complete the purchase. So we had resources available to do so. And that was the justification that we used to explore buying these properties.
Thank you. Alder Pritchett?
Yes, a couple of questions. How many acres are we talking about?
I would need to double check that. Maybe I can see if one of my colleagues can quick do that calculation and in the text box provide me with that number.
Okay, and then the second question is of the total number of acres, that can be developed, how many acres is that, I'm right now I'm trying to figure out how much land can be developed and how much land cannot be developed, because you did mention electrical. My concern is, and I think you say that could be used for parks.
So the 6 properties that we got the appraisal back on for 4.8 million, those are all developable parcels.
Okay.
The 11 parcels that cannot be developed were not included in the appraisal, and for lack of a better term, the owner is basically saying, "City, will you take these on for me? Because I really have no use for them." Really, it's a liability to that owner because the owner has to, mow the grass and pay the property taxes. So it's really a situation where the owner said, "I have, 6 developable properties. I'm willing to sell them to you, but can you also take this undevelopable land off of my hands?"
So it's like a tack on.
Yeah, and it's 6.3 acres of developable land.
Okay. Now, I want to go back to that land that cannot be developed.
Yep.
Okay. Any plans for that?
At this point, no, but certainly we could consider, right now it's mowed grass, so it is, sort of green space. You could go out and kick a ball around on that land. Over time, we could look into, are there some opportunities with it? I don't know if you'd want, for example, like community gardens, like right under the power lines where MG&E might have to come in and disturb them. But there is sort of one portion of part of it that's not right under the power lines. So maybe we decide to do something there, or maybe we, just keep it at green space. Just open green space.
Have you heard of stray voltage?
Generally, yes, but I'm certainly not an expert.
The reason why I ask, over on, let's see, in the La Crosse area, there were several incidents where this farmer kept talking to the city and the county about stray voltage. And the primary reason for doing that was because he noticed that his dairy herd, was not producing as much milk as they were normally doing. And so it was assessed, and it was determined, by environmental people that it was stray voltage. Now, you did mention, that this property could be used primarily for, let's say, community gardens and things like that? And if so, we have this extra property on our hands now, and we don't know what to do with it. Would it be prudent to perhaps consider getting it evaluated or assessed to determine if stray voltage is a problem? And then, who knows, maybe later on down the line, those lines could be buried, and then that property could be used, okay? So that's a consideration for this tack-on, property. And so would it be fair to say that this too accounts for the cost, the property, the appraised cost that we're going to pay?
So the appraised cost does not in any way, let me go back, the value of those 11 lots that are under those high power lines in no way is reflected in the appraised value. The appraiser did not consider anything related to those parcels.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Uguer.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Mikołajewski, first of all, let me just say I have a lot of empathy for what you've reviewed here and you're trying to explain. I just happen to be, at this moment, involved in facilitating a transaction in Vermont where there's a significant difference between the appraisal that I hired and the appraisal that I hired and the assessed value locally, and the local government's trying to figure out what's legitimate. So it sounds familiar. But you had mentioned that it's not unusual to see this kind of a spread between an appraisal of the type we do and assessed value. Could you say in some general way whether this is kind of typical of the spread that we see when we do that? Because I'm sure it's a recurring situation, or is this more exceptional or higher, or a larger difference or a smaller difference?
So I mean, just being perfectly honest, I have not done that analysis. I don't have an analysis that I can share with you, but the spread does exist. I don't think this will be the last time as a city that we see a difference between the assessed value and the appraised value when we're looking at buying a property. And so so the fact that there is a difference is not unusual. We would have to do some more analysis on kind of the amount of the difference in the past transactions. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Have we used this particular appraiser before?
Yes.
And it's a credentialed appraiser that does this kind of appraisal on a regular basis, but potentially used by other governments, not just Madison.
Yes, he is a well-known certified appraiser that we have used numerous times in the past as a city.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks, Matt, for being here and answering our questions. I think that what those who have emailed in and the alarm that's raised is just this big gap between the assessed and the appraised values. Of course, we see this in our own homes. And, yes, our assessments go up, but when it comes time to sell one of our own properties, if we're fortunate enough to be a homeowner, we're often amazed by what demand is out there and what that does to, the purchase price. But Alder Okovitz did ask that the appraisal gets put into Legistar, and I agree that would be a good thing. And if you could also, in reference to Alder Pritchett's questions, include the size of the lots. And generally, are these acre lots, do you know, or acre and a half? I mean, I'm calling up on the map, some of the lots seem to be rather big. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yes, so the lots, again, many thanks to my colleagues here who are texting me things. The lots vary in size from a half an acre to 2.8 acres.
Yeah, just looking on Google Maps, they look rather big. When you get into a situation like this, when there is a big gap, is it ever worthwhile to get a second opinion, a second appraisal?
So there have been times in the past. So what happens is the city orders an appraiser or orders an appraisal through an appraiser. When we get that appraisal back, there are times where we sort of accept it on its face. There are times when we have some questions about some of the assumptions that are included, and we go back to the appraiser. It has been very rare, but there have also been times where we have rejected the appraisal and gone out for a second opinion. That is definitely not the common situation, but it certainly has happened in the past.
And also, I assume the appraisal included a list of comps to justify the number they came up with. Is that included, to your recall, in the appraisal?
Yes.
And my last question, it's been suggested that this body refer this back to finance. Is there a downside to that? Is there, sometimes when we're asked to refer something, the message that we hear is that kind of delay could be costly. It could mess up the, screw up the whole works. Is that an issue here? Or if we were to refer this, would there be a minor and perhaps insignificant cost to the city in doing so?
I mean, as with all transactions, there's two parties. There's the city and the owner. The owner, always has the ability to keep it on the market, to, see if the owner can sell it to other parties. So it is, the risk is that the owner will just decide that I'm going to go on and find someone else maybe to sell it to if the delay is too late. I mean, I think the question isn't so much about the referral to finance as much as it's about what information would the finance committee desire and how long would it take to secure that information.
So, but this has been on the market for some time, correct?
Yes.
So if things were delayed a month or 6 weeks, it might not, particularly if we communicated to the owner of these properties that we just need some more information that might in fact be palatable. It might be something they're amenable to, knowing that there have been questions raised. And if we can satisfactorily answer these questions, we'd very likely move forward. Does that sound like a reasonable scenario to you, or would you advise against that?
I mean, it sounds reasonable to me, but in our conversations with the owner, one of the reasons that the owner was interested in working with the city is because the owner assumed that it would be a relatively quick transaction. We don't have, compared to the private sector, we don't have as many contingencies as a private sector buyer would have. So to the degree that the owner views that this might actually take longer than the owner had anticipated, like it's really up to the owner whether to continue to engage with us on the transaction.
Well, not being able to see the appraisal somewhat handicaps me, at least at this point. And I trust in your good judgment. I feel like if we could have seen the appraisal, it would have been easier for us to say, yes, we trust staff's recommendation to us and the recommendation to finance that was passed. I have a lot of faith in the staff, but not seeing that appraisal is difficult to answer the questions from the community that are being raised at this time. So I think you understand the quandary that I find myself in right now. And that's all I got. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Matt, with all of our failings of technology, I hesitate to suggest this, but is it possible to just email the appraisal to the council?
I can ask my colleagues if they have that handy, that they could email it.
Seems like a fairly straightforward solution. Alder Vitiver, questions?
Yeah, Matt, could you just, I kind of want to take a step back and tell us a little bit about some examples of other developments that the city has done with land banking, just so that, folks can kind of get a sense of what we get when we do these projects?
Sure. So the city's land banking program goes back to about 2011, and one of the first properties that we purchased was the former Don Miller car dealership on East Washington Avenue, where we then, through an RFP process, partnered with Gephardt Development, and Gephardt Development ultimately constructed the Constellation Galaxy and the Spark/Gephardt building. We also, through land banking, purchased the Old Union Corners property, formerly the Rayovac property. And then more recently, we've purchased a handful of properties in South Madison, 1901, 1810 South Park Street, that we are in the process of gearing up to redevelop. And those are the primary ones that come to my mind.
Owl Creek. I would suggest that Owl Creek is maybe the most
and Owl Creek.
comparable example here, where we purchased individual lots in a neighborhood that didn't finish developing, and we have subsequently sold them to Habitat for Humanity and the Land Trust and private developers to produce affordable homeownership options. That's probably the most relevant comparable under this program.
And when we think about particularly purchases that are purchased through TIF, how does that ultimately impact the tax roll? So we talked about, for example, that these properties are currently assessed at a really low value, and that's essentially because there's no buildings on them. So if the city purchases these now and develops on them, what is the ultimate positive impact for the city in terms of tax revenue versus continuing to potentially let them sit vacant if there is no other buyer?
Yes. So as I think most everyone's aware, so as vacant properties, they pay some property tax, but admittedly it's a lower amount because the property's vacant. As soon as buildings are constructed on the property, those buildings will be taxed, and that will enhance the tax base. Currently, this entire area is within TID 44. So as with all TID districts, the increment that's generated by additional development will initially go back to the TID. However, this TID is probably going to close in the not too distant future. And at that point in time, then the value of that development will go to all the taxing jurisdictions.
And it looked like, from what I could find, that the value that's left in the TID at the moment is not sufficient for the amount that was in this resolution. So can you talk about fiscally, how does it happen that we borrow against the TID and then how that gets paid back?
Sure.
It's kind of complex, so.
Yes, the TID project plan would need to be amended in this case to add this additional expenditure. We do, though, project the amount of increment that will be generated in the TID district for the balance of its life, and we believe that there will be enough increment generated to repay the $4 million that's being used out of TID.
And then one of the questions was for the excess properties, the 11 that are under high voltage power lines, why would the city take on that liability? Why would we not ask MG&E to take on that liability instead?
Well, assuming that we were to purchase them, we could have a conversation with MG&E about whether or not they would want to take on that liability. It's just a conversation we haven't had.
Okay. And if we weren't going to purchase this property for development, would we get a park? Like, is there an area that is zoned that it has to be a park no matter what? Which would inhibit somebody else from wanting to purchase the property because they would know that that portion, couldn't be developed? Or is it no, we just want to park there and we would do it, but it's not necessarily zoned that way. I don't know enough about the area. It's not my district. So.
I'm deferring to some of my colleagues to please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe that the properties are specifically slated for a park at this time.
Thank you.
Certainly, if someone can correct me if I'm wrong, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. Are you able to speak at all? So for these 11 additional properties, and I understand if you don't feel like you can answer this question, but on, for example, the MG&E website, it looks like even right now they're starting to do some upgrades that are burying high voltage power lines. So even just thinking about it as like an extremely long-term investment, does it seem like there is a chance that sometime in, the next even like several decades that those could all become developable land?
I think that's a great question. I have to be very honest, though, even if they were buried, I don't know if you could build over them, given that they're high voltage lines.
Okay, that's good to know, but thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovitz.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll direct this to you, Director Mikolajewski, but I know there's also a voice, staff in the sky listening, so if someone could send us also some of that TIF analysis, just interested in the current increment and what the projected increment would be, I would appreciate that, or attach it to Legistar.
Yes, I think Dan can look at the TID metric and forward the numbers of what we project.
Thank you, Dan.
Mr. Rolfs is available to answer that question.
Oh, okay.
Now.
Or yes, that is
Dan?
well. Thank you for the question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. To get to your point, Alder Okovitz, right now the TID 44 is generating around $2.1 million of incremental revenue per year. Assuming that this purchase is approved and we amend the district and there's an additional stormwater project that we've been asked to include in the amendment this year as well. Assuming those two costs are included and move forward, we project that the TID would have sufficient increment to close in roughly 2029, assuming no additional costs are incurred. Does that answer your question?
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, that does answer my question.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Pritchett.
You mentioned that this property had been on the market for plus or minus 15 years. Were there any red flags?
Red flags for the city or for the owner? Or?
No, red flags with respect to why did anyone buy it?
I don't know, and it gets a little dangerous because I don't want to speak for the owner because I'm not the owner. I don't know. So just by way of background, this was the former Agrium fertilizer factory that some people may recall. There was a neighborhood planning process. A neighborhood plan was developed. The current owner subdivided the property, developed several projects, including the site that has the current Penny Library and several single-family homes and several apartment buildings, both market rate and affordable. So there has been development that has been occurring on the property over the past 15 years. What I don't know is, the degree to which over that 15-year period of time, the owner was, actively working on trying to get someone to buy the remaining parcels. Many property owners they'll focus on one thing versus another thing. So in other words, I don't know if it was because there was a lack of interest in the sites or if the owner wasn't really investing a lot of time to find someone to buy them. I just don't know exactly why these particular parcels have remained on the market, but there are no like sort of red flags that I'm aware of that would prevent them from being able to be developed.
You know, I'm asking that because I think at some point in time, you know, there should be an assessment done to find out what's under that dirt.
Well, that we know. So there was significant work that was done in the context of the original subdivision plat when this was the old Agrium fertilizer factory. We actually, as a city, provided some funding many, many years ago to assist with some of the cleanup of this site through a program that we had at the time that hasn't existed in 12 plus years. So we do know that the sites are clean and capable of being developed.
Yeah, so you're saying to me that they have been cleaned. You know, who decided what clean is?
The DNR.
Yeah. You know, this is problematic, okay? You know, and I'm going back and I'm looking at cities, you know, people who have purchased land, they have built on that land, and now they find, you know, later on, you know, that their kids are getting sick. It's a cancer-ridden place. Those kinds of things are problematic, you know, if we don't know what is in that dirt.
I would say, Alder, that we know more about what's in this soil in this subdivision than 95% of the city, because it was well characterized. The previous owner and the current owner worked with the DNR. The DNR has closed the site. So I think we actually know more about this property than we know about most properties in the community.
I hope so. Because I've just seen just too many communities ruined. You know, simply because no one knew what was in the soil and what it was used for. And I'm talking about car batteries and stuff like that. And it happens mostly in communities that have very, very little access to getting answers.
Mm-hmm.
And they find out later on, you know, that this was problematic. And that's why I'm asking, you know, before we sign on that dotted line, I do believe in all sincerity that we should know, we should have some answers.
Yeah, I mean, we do have, my colleagues are reminding me, we do have a due diligence contingency as part of the purchase and sale agreement. So we would have the ability to go back and double check the DNR records, working with the city's hydrogeologist and just confirm that we're comfortable with the condition that the DNR has closed them in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder, I'm sorry, Dan, did you still have your hand up to answer a question?
If I could add a little bit more to Director Mikolajewski's comments, if that's
Please.
acceptable. To address the question from Alder Pritchett, we conduct due diligence prior to any acquisition, and that includes at a minimum a phase 1 environmental site assessment. So we're in the process of conducting that right now, and we would have all of that due diligence completed prior to any acquisition. That is a standard practice for any time we purchase a property, regardless of whether it's land banking or for any other purpose for the city. So we would be extremely cautious. And as Director Mikolajewski noted, we are already aware of quite a bit of what's happened at this site, and we'll continue to do all due diligence necessary to ensure that we protect the city and anybody that would ultimately live there.
Thank you, Dan. Alder, additional?
Yeah. You know, once, you know, if samples were taken, you know, did they randomly sample? Or were they strategic in terms of looking at certain areas?
The testing and work that was done there was done in coordination in conjunction with DNR standards. So anything that was taken there as far as fill that was removed, or more importantly, in this case, fill that was brought back in, was tested throughout that process. So I don't have the sampling in front of me as far as where each thing was sampled from, but I do know that the seller, the DNR, and in this case, the city, have a very good characterization of where things are on the site as far as places that are capped and should not be disturbed, and places that we can do standard development without any other extra conditions.
Okay. What about runoff?
Runoff would be in compliance with the city's stormwater ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. All right. I have no other alders in the queue with questions. So this item has been moved and seconded to adopt. Is there discussion? Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me just circle back to there was questioning that was specifically talking about the benefits of land banking. That was never the issue, because we've had great examples of the success of land banking. So that was not the issue. The issue is that, and it was raised out in our community, that there was missing data that should have been a part of the package. The assessment wasn't there, the appraisal wasn't there, so there was missing pieces that should have been in the packet. And so I have a great amount of respect for staff. That's not the issue. But when we are presenting this and the public is looking at it and they are identifying gaps, and so we are proving this without those gaps being filled, there is a question of why is the city omitting this. And so I think the questioning is that if there's going to be an analysis, when is that going to be provided? If there is an appraisal due, when will that be provided? And that would have been the packet, and people could have just said yes, because it does have its advantages. But there are missing pieces that the public is asking the city, why are we approving this with the gaps in place? And so that is still my concern in terms of how we answer that. And I think that the appraisal, you said that it is forthcoming or whatever that is. Okay. So those are the pieces that we have to really address for the public, to say that we did pause, we did ask the questions, and we got the information that we can provide back to them. So that's my discussion.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers?
Thanks, Mayor. I very much appreciate you asking that the appraisal be sent to us while the discussion has been going on and while the director has been answering questions. I took time to review it. And I think it's pretty evident to me that this process has not been slapdash, that it's been rigorous, that this appraisal was, it's a substantial appraisal for one thing. And I very much trust that staff vetted the appraisal and measured the appraisal against the standards that staff, Dan Ross in the Real Estate Division and Matt in Economic Development would use to evaluate an appraisal. So I'm satisfied, and I'll be voting to approve this, and I'm going to encourage my colleagues to do the same. I don't think we gain anything by referring this. If we had some unanswered questions that we would expect to be answered in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, then let's state what those questions are. But I'm not convinced that we would. This goes back to something that we've dealt with in this body before. If we're going to refer it, we have to be clear as to what we hope to gain from referring it. It's not just that there's no real cost to the city, and yes, we can have another conversation about it. What questions would we be hoping to get answered? And if we don't know exactly what those are, having seen the appraisal, I'm convinced the appraisal was a legitimate professional appraisal. And I trust staff that they vetted it according to their own internal standards and their own internal policies. For that reason, I think there's no harm, no injury into moving forward tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovitz.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate that a big part of, we have a lot of trust in city staff, and it's because we know they're doing their due diligence. Additionally, with the strength of the TID, I don't really see any reason why this would be that concerning. The TID is projected to close 11 years before the maximum life of the TID, and so it's a very healthy state. I think I feel comfortable with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Uyghur.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have the appraisal now, and it's true that I am fairly accustomed to looking through these mind-numbing documents. This one is only 113 pages, but I've gone here to the establishment of the comparables for determining the valuation. They're different for each site because the appraiser chose different comparables depending on their exact nature. It all looks very convincing to me from my experience. And I'd have to say, too, this looks like a very professional appraisal with great depth of logic in determining what the comparables are and arriving at that decision. And I'll say it even goes here, there's a section on what's known from the DNR study with regard to the exposures from the past use. There's a full section on the current appraisals and acknowledging where that is in the totals that we heard about earlier. So it looks to me quite thorough. If I had to say what would I ask finance to look at if it were referred, I don't know what I would ask. I can't think of anything that I'd ask for finance to look at. So I'm comfortable with approving this tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. So on item 83, there is a motion and a second to adopt. Alder Harrington McKinney?
I just want to make sure that I acknowledge the efficiency of the staff. There was never a question about the staff. The fact that they had the information, they were able to supply it very quickly. And so I do appreciate that. And so I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Alder. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor on item 83. That will take us to the end of our agenda. Alder Figueroa Cole, it's your turn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objection, we stand adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.